A vast and enigmatic world, the ocean teems with both fierce and captivating life. Sharks are among its most misunderstood residents. As apex predators, they are essential to marine ecosystems. Although human shark attacks are uncommon, they arouse curiosity and fear, often overshadowing sharks' crucial role in maintaining the ocean's equilibrium. A more profound comprehension of the interconnectedness that supports life beneath the waves is revealed by investigating the delicate interactions between marine life and human encounters. This goes beyond simply telling survival stories. Here are 6 stories. Surfers flocked to the immaculate beaches of False Bay, bringing energy to Cape Town, South Africa, on the morning of April 12, 2024. False Bay was a hunting ground for apex predators that lurked beneath the surface, and a haven for surfers, thanks to its stunning scenery and steady waves. Great white sharks have long been known to frequent the bay directly east of the Cape Peninsula. The lure of flawless waves kept surfers returning despite repeated warnings and sporadic sightings. Surfers like Paul Johnson were among them. Paul, an expatriate from Perth, Australia, 39 years old, has lived in Cape Town for the past 10 years. He was a seasoned surfer, well known in the area for his bold maneuvers and easygoing demeanor. Paul got to the beach shortly after sunrise that morning. Unusually calm waves rolled in clear, glassy sets in the water. In addition to his longtime surfing partner, Declan Venter, a local with sun-bleached hair and a deep tan, he greeted his friends. The topic of discussion as the group got dressed was the recent shark alerts from marine patrols. Declan made light of the fact that people always exaggerated the danger, saying he had been surfing these waters for 20 years and had never come across anything. Paul gave a nod of agreement, but he couldn't get rid of a nagging doubt. The group paddled to the break by mid-morning. With the sun bathing the bay in a golden glow, the water was chilly yet inviting. To see the bigger sets rolling in, Paul moved farther out. Unaware that something enormous and ancient was observing him from below, he sat on his board and looked out over the horizon. False Bay was well known for its waves, but it was also known for being close to Seal Island, a rocky outcrop that was home to many Cape fur seals. Great white sharks were drawn to this natural buffet, especially when they were hunting at their best. According to marine biologists, these waters have some of the highest concentrations of great white sharks in the world. To avoid detection until it was too late, sharks frequently patrolled the bay's murky depths. A clean right-hander carried Paul efficiently toward the shore. It was his first wave of the day. With his heart racing, he paddled back out, ready for the next challenge. His laughter reverberated over the water as Declan and the others supported him from a distance. But the ocean abruptly became uncannily still as Paul waited for the next wave. Paul was unaware that a 16-foot great white shark that weighed close to 2,000 pounds was approaching. It had been circling the area for hours, attracted by the slight fish scent carried by the current and the rhythmic splashes of surfers paddling. As ambush predators, sharks use deception and accuracy to capture their prey. Paul was the ideal target for this one. From the darkness, the shark rushed up with frightful speed. Just as Paul started to paddle for another wave, its enormous body pierced the surface. He flew off his board due to the force of the impact, and his body hit the water with a sickening thud. The shark's jaws clamped down on his abdomen before he could get his bearings. The bite was catastrophic. Blood leaked into the water from a gaping wound created by rows of serrated teeth, tearing through bone, muscle, and flesh. The sea was turned a frothy red by the shark's fierce thrashing and powerful tail. Though his friends on the shore witnessed everything, Paul's scream was muffled by the crashing waves. Watching the water surrounding Paul burst with movement, Declan froze in horror. The shark was not yet done. For a brief moment, it let go of Paul before lunging once more, this time at his lower body. Its teeth sank into his legs, breaking bones and severing arteries. Paul tried in vain to defend himself against the predator's overwhelming strength. He was drawn beneath the surface as its enormous body twisted. Declan and the others could only observe from the shore. The surfers still in the water panicked and frantically paddled to safety. As the situation became apparent, beachgoers screamed while lifeguards sounded the alarm. Paul's vision blurred underwater as shock and blood loss took hold. The shark, its instincts satiated, let him go one last time. His mutilated body floated lifelessly in the crimson-streaked water before vanishing into the depths. Minutes later, rescue boats arrived, but it was too late. A few hours later, Paul's body washed up near a rocky inlet. At first, identifying him was difficult due to the severity of his injuries. Only after matching his personal belongings to those found near the surf spot did authorities confirm his identity. The local community was shaken as word of the attack spread quickly. Many surfers who frequented False Bay vowed never to return to the water. The attack also reignited debate over shark conservation versus human safety. Some argued that people were encroaching on the shark's natural habitat, while others called for increased culling efforts. Declan, who witnessed the attack, struggled to cope with the trauma. Ultimately, he gave up surfing, unable to escape the memory of his friend's final moments. A week after Paul's death, the local surfing community tossed flowers into the sea in memory of a man who had loved the ocean despite its dangers. Experts made assumptions about what could have caused the attack. While some thought it was a case of territorial aggression, others suggested the shark thought Paul was a seal. For whatever reason, the incident was a sobering reminder of the unpredictability of the ocean. The beaches of False Bay remained eerily silent for several months. A sense of caution and fear had taken the place of the once thriving surf scene. The name Paul Johnson came to represent the dangers of surfing in shark-infested waters. Both residents and visitors recounted his story, which served as a warning about the conflict between humans and the natural world. Ultimately, Paul's passing served as a sobering reminder of the ocean's dual nature, its cruelty and its beauty. The memory of April 12, 2024, a terrifying testament to the power of the predator that took his life, lingered over those who still surfed at False Bay. California's Monterey Bay, known for its biodiversity, is a section of the ocean surrounded by rocky cliffs. The bay is famous for its kelp forests, abundant marine life, and playful sea lions. It has also gained a reputation as a great white shark hotspot. Sightings of these apex predators have increased recently, alarming local fishermen and divers. September marked the peak of their migratory season when sharks approached the coast in pursuit of seals. Kelly Thompson met a tragic and untimely end on a clear Thursday morning during this dangerous time of year. A 29-year-old freelance underwater photographer, she had been diving in Monterey Bay for years. She was raised with the ocean as her playground in the seaside town of Carmel by the Sea. She was bold and adventurous, according to her friends, and she viewed the ocean as an extension of herself rather than a dangerous place. To raise awareness of the environmental issues endangering the ecosystem, Kelly recently embarked on a project to document the Monterey Bay kelp forests. The last dive she would make was on September 15, 2022. Kelly reached San Carlos Beach, a well-liked diving entry point that morning. Only a few divers were setting up their equipment on the quiet beach. Her old blue pickup truck was parked, and she started unloading her gear. One of the other divers, Darren Holbrook, a local instructor renowned for his caution, was present. Kelly had appeared composed, even happy as she got ready for her dive, he recalled later. Unbeknownst to her, she was wearing a bright yellow wetsuit and carrying a high-resolution underwater camera, which would make her an even more obvious target in the hazy waters ahead. That day, Monterey Bay waters were surprisingly inviting. There was hardly any wind rippling the waves, and the surface was quiet by 9:30 a.m. Kelly got into the water. As she swam in the direction of the kelp forest, her fins cut through the water. She intended to dive alone, something she frequently did despite advice from friends and coworkers. Kelly had always liked the peace of the ocean because she could concentrate better on her photography without other people distracting her. The eerie beauty of the kelp forest surrounded Kelly as she dove deeper into the water. The tall, golden-brown fronds created a surreal, cathedral-like ambiance as they swayed gently with the current. She stopped to take a picture of an enormous leopard shark moving elegantly through the kelp as schools of fish swooped past her. Only the faint creaks of the kelp shifting in the water and the rhythmic bubbles escaping from her regulator were audible. The predator's silent approach broke the moment of calm and concentration. Kelly had no idea she was being watched. Witness reports and bite patterns later revealed that a 17-foot great white shark had been prowling the area. Being ambush predators, These sharks use speed and stealth to kill their prey. Its predatory instincts were probably aroused by Kelly's bright wetsuit and her leisurely movements among the kelp. With its enormous body blending in perfectly with the open ocean shadows, the shark came up behind. It was an abrupt and vicious attack. Kelly was unexpectedly attacked by the shark, which clamped down on her right leg with its strong jaws. Her limb was immediately severed by the bite force, and blood poured into the water in a cloud. Kelly's body trembled in shock as she struggled to understand the unbearable agony. Her camera slipped out of her hand and slowly sank to the bottom of the sea. Unconcerned by her actions, the great white let go of her severed leg and recirculated for another blow. Later, Darren Holbrook and other witnesses on a nearby dive boat reported seeing a red stain smearing across the surface of the water. Darren, who had been guiding a team of inexperienced divers nearer the coast, realized right away that something was amiss. As he radioed for emergency help, he remembered yelling for everyone to exit the water. However, the situation had gotten out of hand before anyone could act to save Kelly. Even more devastating was the shark's second attack. It swung at Kelly's side, its fangs ripping into her torso and through her wetsuit. She was violently shaken by the predator, which attempted to render its victim unconscious by flailing its enormous tail in the water. Blood gushed from Kelly's wounds, causing her body to go limp and her struggles to stop. Although it wasn't complete, the shark let her go once more. It made one last circle, this time aiming for her chest. In a matter of seconds, it disemboweled her after tearing into her body with a single terrifying bite. Now that the water was swollen with blood, Kelly's corpse started to sink. Little remained for recovery when the Coast Guard arrived. Only a few pieces of a ripped wetsuit and a floating pool of blood indicated where the attack had occurred. Hours passed while divers looked around in the hopes of finding Kelly's body, but to no avail. The great white shark likely pulled her remains into deeper waters well out of the search team's reach. Her camera, discovered lying on the ocean floor, was the only object found. Remarkably undamaged, the memory card held the last pictures Kelly had taken. Eerie images of the kelp forest and her last peaceful moments before the assault. The diving community was shocked to learn of Kelly's passing. After years of being regarded as a diver's paradise, Monterey Bay suddenly felt terrifying. Marine biologist Dr. Evelyn Marquette and other local officials warned divers to be extremely cautious due to the area's increased number of great white sharks. The increase in shark activity, according to Dr. Marquette, was probably caused by the increasing number of seals, which attracted the predators nearer to the coast. She stressed that shark attacks on humans were uncommon and typically the result of misidentification. But her assurances did little to allay the community's fears. Her passing devastated Kelly's friends and family. In a statement, her parents, Alan and Judith Thompson, expressed their sorrow over their daughter's passing and urged more people to be mindful of ocean safety. Kelly was portrayed as a fearless, fervent young woman who had died doing what she loved. To honor her memory, dozens of friends, fellow divers, and locals gathered on the shores of Monterey Bay for a memorial service. Kelly's life and contributions were honored with a plaque near San Carlos Beach and flowers thrown into the ocean. Numerous divers avoided Monterey Bay in the months after the attack. Only the bravest and most experienced people were entering the water at the once bustling dive sites, which became uncannily quiet. The revenue of some local businesses that depended on tourism fell precipitously. The assault on Kelly Thompson served as a sobering reminder of the unpredictable nature of the ocean and the fine line separating people from the natural world. Those who knew Kelly Thompson and those who visit Monterey Bay are still haunted by her story. Her camera, which is now housed in a nearby maritime museum, is a terrifying reminder of her last dive. And while the ocean is still as stunning and enigmatic as ever, it also bears the scars of a brutal assault, serving as a reminder that there is a world beneath its surface that is both merciless and magnificent. Kaikoura is a small seaside town on the eastern coast of the South Island of New Zealand. It is well known for its dramatic cliffs, rich marine life, and the chilly, choppy Pacific Ocean. Tragic events occurred here on June 22, 2023. While on what should have been a typical fishing trip, 42-year-old local fisherman Mark Robinson met a grisly end. With its long history as a whaling station and later as a center for ecotourism, Kaikoura had always been a place where people lived side by side with nature's unpredictable forces. Its coastline was teeming with marine life, including enormous sperm whales and playful dolphins, which attracted tourists worldwide. On the other hand, great white sharks were more dangerous predators that lurked in the colder, deeper waters. Although shark sightings were not unusual in the region, deadly encounters were extremely rare, which made Mark Robinson's passing all the more shocking. Mark was a lifelong resident of Kaikoura. Described by his neighbors as a solitary yet hard-working man, he had spent much of his life fishing the waters he knew well. On the morning of June 22nd, he set out alone in his small fishing vessel, the Sea Wanderer, a simple 18-foot boat. He launched from the rocky beach just as the sun rose, the chilly winter air stinging his face. Planning to spend the day catching blue cod and tarakihi, two of the area's most sought-after fish, he headed into familiar waters. There were clouds in the sky that morning, and the sea was icy cold, a sign of winter storms to come. Mark had gone to sea for roughly 4 kilometers, which was far enough to stay clear of the tourist boats while still being well within the fishing grounds. Even experienced fishermen like Mark occasionally felt uneasy in this area because of the deep and dark water. Casting his lines and bringing in a small but consistent catch, he concentrated on his work. He had packed his cooler full of fish by midday. That's when things started to go wrong. One of his bait boxes had come loose and was sliding toward the boat's edge as Mark readjusted his lines. Although it was a minor annoyance, Mark was meticulous about his equipment. To secure the box, he leaned over the side without noticing that his weight had moved too much. A sudden swell that slightly tilted the boat threw him off balance. Mark suddenly fell into the icy water and overboard. The cold hit him like a sledgehammer, robbing his lungs of their breath. It was impossible to climb back aboard the Sea Wanderer without help, due to its slight rocking and drifting just out of reach. Although Mark could swim, his strength was rapidly depleted by the icy water and the weight of his bulky clothing. He called out for assistance even though he knew no one was around to hear him. His actions on the boat had drawn an unwanted observer, but Mark was unaware. Attracted by the smell of fish and the vibrations of his movements in the water, a 14-foot great white shark, likely a female given its size, was circling the area. Even though they didn't usually hunt people, white sharks were opportunistic hunters, and Mark's flailing in the water was more than enough to attract the shark's attention. The attack was unexpected. Mark was fighting to stay afloat for 1 second, and then a tremendous force hit him from below and pulled him under the water. The shark's jaws clamped down on his leg, its sharp teeth effortlessly slicing through bone and flesh. When Mark's survival instincts took over, he fought valiantly, flailing and kicking in an attempt to get away. In response, the shark shook him violently, thrashing its strong body in the water until his leg was ripped off. The water was hazy with blood, leaving a chilling crimson bloom, which was where the attack occurred. The shark's assault was relentless in its ferocity. It momentarily let go of Mark before striking him once more, this time burying its teeth in his torso. He was nearly dead from the force of the bite, which crushed his ribs and punctured his organs. Mark was pulled farther into the icy black abyss by the shark as his body went limp. The water muffled his screams so nobody could hear them. A local fisherman, Fergus Treadley, spotted the Sea Wanderer adrift a few hours later. At first, Fergus, a wiry man in his 60s with decades of boating experience, thought Mark had just drowned after falling overboard. He didn't realize something much worse had happened until he noticed the bloodstains on the side of the boat and the strewn fishing gear. He quickly organized a search after radioing the local authorities. For hours, a search and rescue team under the command of Senior Constable Elwyn Hargrove searched the area. In the end, Hargrove discovered Mark's body, or what was left of it, washed up on a secluded island. Mark was horribly disfigured, with his right arm severed at the shoulder, his left leg gone, and his torso mangled. The severity of the wounds left even the most experienced officers visibly shaken, even though the injuries were consistent with a shark attack. Kaikoura was a close-knit community, and news of the attack quickly spread. Mark's passing rekindled long-standing concerns about the perils that lurk in the ocean. as it was the first fatal shark attack in the area in more than 20 years. Many local fishermen who had known Mark personally started to take extra precautions like fishing in groups and staying away from shark-active areas. Others even advocated for culling programs to lower the shark population. But marine conservationists objected, claiming that such actions were detrimental to the ecosystem. Government officials also took action as a result of the incident. The Department of Conservation announced plans to increase shark monitoring in the area through drones and tagging programs to better understand shark behavior and lower the likelihood of future attacks. Although many people applauded these actions, they didn't do much to lessen Mark's family and friends' immediate grief. The death of Mark Robinson served as a sobering reminder of how erratic and frequently cruel the ocean can be. His passing served as a sobering reminder of the thin line separating tragedy and coexistence in Kaikoura, a town that has always coexisted peacefully with the sea. To those who knew him, Mark represented the dangers faced by people who decided to live on the water rather than merely being a victim of circumstance. His life, which was characterized by his love for the ocean despite its darkest depths, would live on in memory not only for how he passed away. The stunning seaside town of Byron Bay, located in Australia's New South Wales, is well known for its immaculate beaches, glistening waters, and abundant marine life. The area, which is well known for being a haven for swimmers and surfers, has experienced its share of shark activity over the years, but nothing could have prepared the locals for the tragedy that occurred on February 4th, 2024. A lot was going on at the beach that Sunday morning. Swimmers delighted in the warm summer waters, families relaxed on the sand, and kids constructed intricate sandcastles. One of them, Laura Miller, 34, was a Melbourne-based marketing executive who was on a weekend trip to Byron Bay. A skilled swimmer, Laura had always loved the sea and often swam in open waters. That morning, she chose to escape the crowded shoreline and enjoy the solitude of the deeper sea. She had no idea it would be her last swim. Laura entered the water near Clark's Beach, a popular spot for both locals and visitors. The sky was clear, the waves gentle, perfect conditions for swimming. About 200 meters offshore, where the water was calm and inviting, she paddled with confidence. But a predator lurked beneath the surface, ready to turn the picturesque setting into a nightmare. At approximately 10:45 a.m., Harold Hal Brimstone, a 52-year-old veteran of the Byron Bay Surf Life Saving Club and an experienced lifeguard, noticed unusual activity in the deeper waters. A group of dolphins that had been playing nearby suddenly scattered, behaving strangely. Hal immediately recognized this as a potential warning sign, having spent decades studying marine life from his post on the lifeguard tower. He radioed Tess Marlowe, a 29-year-old lifeguard stationed closer to the water, instructing her to keep a close watch on the area. However, the attack began before anyone could intervene. Marine authorities later determined that the 15-foot great white shark was a mature female that had been cruising the area. Swimming alone, Laura became the shark's target, likely drawn by the splashing of swimmers and possibly the scent of fish from nearby reefs. Suddenly, with immense force, the predator struck, clamping its powerful jaws around her left leg. The impact was so severe that it instantly severed her limb, leaving Laura in shock and agony. Her scream pierced the air, startling swimmers closer to shore. The shark was far from finished. As blood mixed with the water, Laura struggled to stay afloat. The shark briefly released her, only to circle back quickly and terrifyingly. The second strike was even more devastating. The shark's razor-sharp teeth tore through flesh and bone as it bit into her side. As Laura's body went limp, the water turned a deep, horrifying red. On shore, bystanders watched in shock, unable to process the brutality unfolding before them. Tess and Hal immediately sprang into action, racing toward the scene on a rescue jet ski. But the attack had happened so quickly that by the time they reached Laura, it was clear there was nothing they could do. Her body had been severely dismembered, with several parts missing. Only a gruesome trail of blood and floating debris remained as the shark disappeared into the depths, perhaps having mistaken her for a seal or other prey. The aftermath was chaotic. As lifeguards and first responders secured the area, swimmers were pulled from the water. Police arrived to investigate the incident, including Detective Sergeant Roderick "Roddy" Vance. An experienced officer, Roddy, known for his steely exterior, later admitted that the scene was one of the most horrifying he had ever witnessed. Although it was a violent and random act of nature, there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. To monitor shark activity, authorities quickly closed all beaches in the Byron Bay region, posting signs and deploying drones. To assess the situation, Dr. Eloise Chappell, a marine biologist and consultant for the Department of Primary Industries in New South Wales, was called in. Although the great white shark's actions were horrifying, she explained that they were in line with its natural instincts. In a press conference, she stated that sharks do not hunt people, and that the attack was most likely a case of misidentification. The splashing of swimmers could have mimicked the movements of injured seals or fish, which are the primary food sources for sharks. Laura's death shocked both the local and wider communities. Byron Bay, typically associated with tranquility and beauty, was now the site of a horrific accident. Travelers canceled their reservations, and businesses that relied on beachgoers reported a significant decline in trade. Memorials were held on the beach in the following days, with candles and flowers placed in the sand to honor Laura's memory. Her family, devastated by the loss, issued a statement urging beachgoers to respect the ocean and its inhabitants. The attack reignited debates about shark safety measures in Australia. Some locals, like fisherman Amos Trenchard, called for increased shark culling to prevent future tragedies. Others, including marine conservationist Felix Durham, opposed such measures, stressing the need to preserve the delicate balance of marine ecosystems. Felix told a local news outlet that they couldn't let fear dictate their actions. As summer progressed, Byron Bay gradually returned to normal, though the memory of Laura Miller's death lingered. For lifeguards like Hal and Tess, the incident served as a grim reminder of the ocean's unpredictability. Despite their best efforts to keep people safe, nature ultimately has the final say. The tragedy of Laura Miller remains one of the most brutal shark attacks in recent memory, etched in the history of Byron Bay. While the beaches eventually reopened, many swimmers found themselves looking over their shoulders, acutely aware of the unseen dangers lurking just beneath the surface. On March 8, 2021, the waters off the coast of Point Reyes, California were calm, the ocean gleaming under a pale morning sun. Located about 30 miles northwest of San Francisco, the area was known for its rugged beauty and rich marine life. It had long been a hotspot for fishermen, surfers, and marine enthusiasts. However, beneath the tranquil surface, the waters had a darker reputation. Over the years, sporadic reports of great white shark sightings had circulated among locals, though the frequency of attacks was low. That changed on this fateful day. John Harris, a 48-year-old fisherman from Clearwater, Florida, had traveled across the country for what he called the trip of a lifetime. Known among his friends for his adventurous spirit and sharp sense of humor, John had spent years exploring fishing destinations around the United States. He had rented a small boat, the Golden Marlin, and set out alone from a harbor in Marin County early that morning. He planned to spend the day deep-sea fishing, far from the crowded shorelines of California. John was no stranger to the risks of solo fishing in open water. He had once joked that the fish was more dangerous than the ocean, but his confidence bordered on complacency, and he paid little attention to the warnings issued by local authorities about shark activity in the area. The waters off Point Reyes were part of the so-called Red Triangle, a stretch of ocean notorious for being a hunting ground for great white sharks. Still, John dismissed the warnings as exaggerated. By noon, John had already hauled in a decent catch of Pacific halibut and rockfish. Standing on the deck of his small boat, he was focused on reeling in a particularly stubborn fish when his foot slipped on the wet surface. Before he could regain his balance, he tumbled overboard, plunging into the cold, dark water. At first, he was more annoyed than alarmed. He had taken falls before and was confident he could climb back aboard the Golden Marlin. However, as he surfaced gasping for air, he felt an unshakable sense of dread. Unbeknownst to John, a 17-foot great white shark had been circling the boat, likely attracted by the blood and bait in the water. The creature was a massive female, its dark silhouette cutting through the water like a torpedo. Within seconds, the shark closed in. When the attack came, it was swift and brutal. The shark struck John from below its jaws, clamping down on his right thigh. The force of the bite was enough to sever muscle and snap bone, leaving John in shock and agony. In an attempt to defend himself, he flailed wildly, but the shark's strength and size were too much for him. It swung its head wildly, its razor-sharp teeth tearing through flesh. Victor and Marjorie Bellamy, a retired couple, were sailing their yacht, the Sea Thistle, nearby when they noticed the disturbance. At first, Victor thought it was an attack on a seal, but Marjorie soon spotted the vivid orange of John's life jacket. They quickly turned their boat toward the scene and radioed for assistance, though neither could have predicted the horror they were about to encounter. When the Sea Thistle arrived, the Golden Marlin was floating eerily with its deck empty, and the water was a deep red. The Bellamys scanned the water but couldn't find John. All that remained was a torn fragment of his life jacket, drifting amidst the wreckage. Later, Victor described the scene as something out of a nightmare. Within an hour of the incident, the Coast Guard launched a search and rescue operation. Divers braved the shark-infested waters, and helicopters scoured the area. But all they found were pieces of John's fishing gear and his bloody life jacket. It soon became clear that John Harris was no longer there. The local community and beyond were shaken by the attack. Shark specialists weighed in on the incident, including Dr. Linus Caldwell of the Monterey Bay Aquarium. According to Dr. Caldwell, great white sharks rarely purposefully attack people. It's possible the shark mistook John for a seal or another type of prey. The attack was so intense that even experienced marine biologists were unsettled. In the weeks following the tragedy, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife issued several warnings to local fishermen and boaters. Marinas posted signs and local news outlets aired shark safety segments. Despite these efforts, the waters of the Red Triangle remained some of the riskiest for fishermen and swimmers. For those who knew John Harris, his death was a sobering reminder of the ocean's unpredictable and often unforgiving nature. His family and friends remembered him as someone who lived life to the fullest, despite the dangers, at a memorial service in Clearwater. Victor Bellamy, who was present at the scene, later said that he couldn't stop thinking about the image of the blood-stained water. For months, he and Marjorie stopped sailing, troubled by the realization that they had been so close yet powerless to help. Though the waters off Point Reyes eventually calmed, John Harris's story remained a terrifying warning to anyone who ventured out into the ocean. Despite its vastness and beauty, the sea remained a place of wonder and constant danger. Cape Cod, Massachusetts was bustling with summer activity on the serene morning of July 3, 2020. Tourists had been drawn to this popular destination for decades, attracted by its picturesque coastlines and charming towns. The beaches along the Cape, especially near Truro, were filled with swimmers, families, and avid surfers. But beneath the beautiful waves, a growing concern was surfacing, an increase in great white shark sightings, driven by the area's thriving seal population. Locals had begun calling it the Summer of Sharks, but no one could have predicted the impending catastrophe. For the holiday, Sophie Lewis, a 27-year-old teacher from New Jersey, had been spending time with friends on Cape Cod. Sophie was known for her adventurous spirit and love of the ocean, though she wasn't an experienced swimmer. She and her friends, nurse Nadine Price and tech consultant Caleb Hart, had camped out on Ballston Beach that morning. The chilly water offered a welcome respite from the summer heat, and the three of them laughed as they waded into the Atlantic. Caleb and Nadine stayed closer to the shore, while Sophie, eager to explore, swam farther out. Near the shallows, the water was clear, but as Sophie swam farther out, it became murkier. Unbeknownst to her, a 16-foot great white shark, a female often seen in the area according to local researchers, was prowling nearby. Due to the large number of seals in the area, these apex predators had been observed getting closer to the coast over time. Sophie, casually splashing, was now within striking distance. Unexpectedly, the shark attacked. With remarkable force, its jaws clamped down on Sophie's leg as it surged upward from below, silent and powerful. Her limb was nearly severed in the disastrous first bite. Sophie thrashed around, her cries drowned out by the vastness of the ocean. Caleb and Nadine froze in horror as they saw her disappear beneath the surface, only to resurface moments later in a frothy mix of blood and water. The shark, acting on instinct, struck again. With terrifying efficiency, its subsequent bite ripped through muscle and crushed bone as it tore into her chest. The predator's overwhelming strength rendered Sophie powerless. Fear and the sobering realization that they were helpless to save her left her friends unable to do anything but watch. Nadine, shaking, tried to call for help on her phone but found no signal. Caleb yelled toward the lifeguard stand, but the distance made it impossible to communicate clearly. The water had become eerily still by the time a lifeguard boat arrived, guided by terrified bystanders pointing toward the chaos. Sophie's body was discovered mangled and barely recognizable, not far from the scene of the attack. The aftermath of the shark's disappearance would haunt her friends and the neighborhood. The tragedy rocked Cape Cod, and fears about the expanding shark population were reignited as word of the attack spread. Marine specialists clarified that although these occurrences were horrifying, they were uncommon and usually the result of misidentification. Sharks frequently mistake swimmers for their favorite prey seals. Such explanations, however, did little to reassure those who knew Sophie. For weeks, Nadine and Caleb battled trauma and guilt. They recounted the events to authorities and spoke with grief counselors, but the memories proved impossible to shake. Sophie's death became a grim reminder of the ocean's unpredictable dangers and the fragile balance between humans and nature. Local authorities installed new warning systems and detection buoys as part of increased shark monitoring efforts. Beaches posted signs warning swimmers not to go out alone and to stay close to shore. Ballston Beach, once associated with carefree summer days, now carries a somber connotation. The attack served as a stark reminder to Sophie's loved ones and the people of Cape Cod of nature's untamed power. The fact that humans are not the top predators in the ocean became a sobering truth. With her name forever marked in the tragic history of Cape Cod's Summer of Sharks, Sophie's story became a warning.